Alright, so this video should have been made pretty much about 3 months ago, and that kind of explains my schedule essentially. What we're going to look at is how to add Vuetify free to a Nuxt free project or application. So I've seen a couple of tutorials that pretty much goes through this, but for me, I find them pretty a little bit complicated for essentially the task because it's actually not necessarily complicated, and they add stuff that are additionally not necessary for essentially a basic setup if that is what we're trying to accomplish here. So what I want to do is to look at two simple approaches to adding Vuetify free to Nuxt 3, and it can be a little bit confusing maybe at first because there is no official setup guide for this. Uh, so what I'm going to just show is just the two approaches, and then at the end of the day you can choose which one that best fits your project or your need. So I'll just where are we? We're gonna CD into projects view, YouTube view, and I'm actually going to be using Vim for this here. Typically what I'll do for front-end projects is to use VS Codium, but I actually deleted it the other day and I haven't installed it back as yet. So as a result of that, we're just going to be using Vim. Alright, so now first thing that we want to do is to actually create the Nuxt project. So we're going to use npx Nuxi, the CLI in it, and we're going to be creating a project called Vuetify 3 Nuxt 3. Click on enter. This should be created extremely quickly. If you don't have Nuxi or npx, I think this, well, if you don't have Nuxi, I think this will prompt you to install it, and then you just type yes and install, and that should be it. We're gonna cd what it's telling us is that we need to cd now into the directory or the steps that we're given, and do a yarn install to, or do an install to install the dependencies. You can use any one of those package managers. We're going to be using yarn for this one because I don't know, I like yarn, it's simple. So we're going to cd into here, and what I prefer to do instead of this is that if I need any additional dependencies for my projects, I usually just add them here, and then it will just automatically do the install as well. So I'm gonna do a yarn add dev. We're going to need Vuetify, so we're gonna just add this and it will automatically do the install as well. So let's go ahead and install these. Alright, so now that that is added, we can now go ahead and do some additional configs. So there's one optional dependency that I could have added, and that is the MD font, and I'm gonna add that later on because this is just for the basic setup. You can add optional fonts, so this is again, it's just optional. If you want, you can add it. So I'll add that at the end just to show you how beneficial essentially it is to the project, or if you want to try a different font library or icons library, then that's really up to you at the end of the day. So here we need view Nuxt 3 is a little bit more minimalistic as opposed to Nuxt 2. You can see that all we have are these files and folders in here. So what I want to do is to create a plugins directory and also a plugins file for Vuetify. So I'm gonna go ahead and create plugins directory, and then we're gonna use Vim to create the file in here. So we're gonna call it Vuetify.ts, and because I am a little bit lazy, I'm gonna go over here. I have the docs pull up here. I'll go to get started, and we are going to essentially copy these configs. So all of these import statements, you could type this out if you want, that's really up to you. Just so I don't make any mistakes, I am just going to copy and paste them. So essentially what we're adding is we're importing the Vuetify styles, and what I've noticed that a lot of the tutorials, they're adding Sass and Vue or Sass loader, which is, for me, I don't think that's I feel like that's more of an optional dependency, as an additional unnecessary dependency because Vue actually gives us the styles. So you don't necessarily have to really I guess build those out or load those up unless you're using like SAS. Otherwise, then that's really up to you. Then we're going to be adding or create Vuetify there, and also adding all the components, all the directives. So now we need to export our default plugin here. So let's go ahead and do a define Nuxt plugin. We also need the Nuxt app because this is going to be useful for us to get the Vue app. So let's go ahead and create our function, and then all we need here is to copy this part to create the Vuetify instance essentially. So let's format this a bit, and there we go. So once we have this, we're pretty much set, but there's one thing that I want to add here, and that is SSR true. And this is because by default Vue 3 well, by default Nuxt 3, or well, Nuxt in general is SSR by default. However, Nuxt 3 or Vue 3 I should say has no way of automatically detecting if we're using SSR. So we have to manually check for it in the framework. So that's what we're going to be doing, and this is used so that we can to properly render the application. So this is not, you don't have to add this, so I'm just going to add that this is optional. And what it does is that it detects, well, it detects if SSR is used. So I think that just adding that won't hurt, so, and it's good, so why not? Next thing is to actually use this thing. So the same way that we've used it right down here, so we're just getting the Vue app so that we can use it. So we're just saying Nuxt app, and then we're going to do Vue app, capital A dot use, and then we're just gonna add Vuetify here, close these out, save, and then that is pretty much it for our config. So we're going to go ahead and go to our Nuxt config now, and actually we're gonna need to transpile the Vuetify. So we're just gonna build transpile, and we'll just add a Vuetify array to the array here. Close this out, and that is it. Final thing that we need to do for this setup is to actually test it. That's pretty much it for the setup and installation. Only thing that we need to do is just to test this to see if it is actually working. So let me clear that out, get a component here, and we can grab this one, and I'm actually grabbing this for a specific reason, and I'll show you afterwards. So we'll paste that in here, save, and quit, and clear this out so that I can do a yarn dev on this. And so this is loading, and it's going to take a while because we have to build it, and it takes like 900 milliseconds, which it's okay, but could do better. Well, not okay, we can do better, a lot better. Alright, awesome. So now you can see that we have our component working, and that is pretty much it for the setup. There's just one thing that we're missing, and that is the icon that is right here. And again, as I had mentioned, this is optional. You can add your own different font or icon library. It's really up to you. But for this, because Vuetify by default essentially has was using this or is still using it, I think it's a good way, especially for a basic setup. So we're gonna add md/font, and we're going to add this now. So once we have that, we'll just go ahead and add the config to the plugin. So let's go ahead and again, lazy, so I'm just gonna copy this right here and paste it right in there. Save that, and we can do a yarn dev again, and we're gonna look at how long this is going to take us. So it took a little bit longer than the last time. It was 9.11, well, 911 actually, and it's still warming up. So let's go ahead and open. Well, it's already open, so it's reloading. But now you can see that everything is pretty much set. Um, my camera, well, my recording might not have the best graphics at this time because I haven't recorded for so long, and I think the configuration has changed. But at least I think you should be able to see what we have here that is actually working well. Uh, but what we're going to see here is that there are some caveats to this approach. So while it is quick and simple, as you can see, it didn't take as long as I've seen some of the tutorials. It's like pretty simple to set up and all. It is it has the issue where it imports pretty much all the components and all the directories, even if we're not using them essentially in our final build, which is going to be bad for performance at the end of the day, especially in production. And this is where the next approach is going to come into play, where we're going to look at tree shaking. So Vuetify comes with plugins for both Webpack and Vite that enables automatic tree shaking. And what will this will do is just enable a drastically lower build size, because it will just automatically add only the components that was used in the application into the final build to our project. And optionally, what you can do is you could actually just manually import the components that you need. So for example, if you're only using the V tooltip or something like that, you can just add that alone and not necessarily add all of the directives or all of the components into your project. But what we're going to look at is the Vite plugin, because that's essentially like the primary bundler at this point for Vue 3. So that's what we're going to look at. So I'm going to cd up, and then we're going to create the project. But what I want to note is that when I upload this, or if I upload this to GitHub, I may just add it under a branch. Say just one project and separate it into different branches. So we're gonna do Nuxt init, call it pretty much the same name as we had before, but I'm just gonna add v to the end of this, and that creates it. So we're gonna cd into the project now, and there we go. At this point, I'm gonna add all the dependencies at once, so we just simplify how we're going to be adding this. So we're gonna do a yarn dev add, and we want 3 different dependencies at this point. We want Vuetify, obviously. We want the Vite plugin, Vuetify, and I'm going to also add the fonts, icons, or whatever here as well. So we're gonna go ahead and just add all of those. All right, there we go. So now we need to again create a plugins directory because we don't have it, and then we're going to create the plugins file, or the plugin file for Vuetify, and we'll just add our config again, but this config is going to be a lot simpler. So here, good thing we're already here. All we need is our Ds essentially. So I'm gonna paste this in here. We also need the create Vuetify instance or import here, so I'm gonna add that as well. And then all we need is here, because I would have mentioned how this goes already, but first we need to export the plugin. Do an export default in here. So we're gonna define Nuxt plugin. We need the Nuxt app again. You already know what that's for, and then we can paste this in here. format this a bit. Again, we know what this is for. It's good. I'm gonna look at what happens when we don't when we're in different modes a little bit from now. So let's go ahead and do the Nuxt add view app, or Nuxt app view app, and then use Vuetify, and that's it. So let's close this out, save, and I'm gonna go ahead and configure this now inside of the Nuxt config. So essentially what we're doing is tree shaking. So let's look at the doc for tree shaking and how we set it up for Nuxt 3. So essentially, if we're looking at Nuxt here, what we're doing is we're importing Vuetify from the Vite plugin, and then we're configuring it essentially as a plugin. So we're doing an async, adding it to the Nuxt hook and all of that here. So essentially, we're just extending the Vite config for us to add the Vuetify to it, and it's kind of pretty much just this, because this is a Vite config application. So it's pretty much just this in a different, in the Nuxt way of doing it. So what I'm going to do is just copy everything that we have here, delete this, paste that in, and we are going to get an error here right about here, and type error, because this is actually could be null, so we're going to have a TypeScript type error. So one thing that could be done here is that we could put this nullable symbol here to check, but I've tried this before and it doesn't work. So the best option that I've seen so far is just to ignore the error. So we can just do ts ignore, and that will ignore the error. But we'll also get another error because by default Nuxt 3 or Nuxt in general is SSR by default, and it's going to be looking for the CSS and all of that while running the server, and that's not gonna work out all that great for Vuetify. So what we can do here is just to create a Vite config, so SSR, and what we're doing is no external for Vuetify. So I think there should be an array here. Yes, so Vuetify, and then we'll just close this out. Well, I need to put a comma there. So we're gonna save that, and that is pretty much it for our configuration here. I'm gonna look at a different way as opposed to doing this, and this is when we're not using SSR. So if I know, well, what we need to do is just to have something to actually show that this is actually working. So let me delete this, and we can go to the cards again. Here I'm gonna look for a different card. So this one, not GitHub. I'm gonna copy all of this, paste it in here, and then we're going to save that and quit, clear this out, and then we're gonna do a yarn dev. Alright, so you can see that this cuts it. So you can see that this cuts it pretty much by half already. Well, not necessary, because I notice this is much larger. But if we run it again, you're gonna see how quick, much faster Vite is going to help us with some amount of optimization for this. So this is running. So we can go over here and we can see the changes already. So that is pretty much it for the setup. In the event that you're not using, what we're going to be editing is the Nuxt config. So in the event that you're not using, for example, SSR, this is pretty much not going to be needed, or at least this part of it won't be needed. So I'm gonna comment this out right now. So, well, actually I'm gonna show you what will happen. So we should get an error here because it's not going to be able to pick up the CSS or that CSS file. But you can see that it runs much faster this time around as opposed to the other time. So you can see that it's not picking up this file here. So what we're going to do at this point is just to show you that if we just go ahead and do SSR false, this is an option. If you're not using SSR, then this will work perfectly fine. So you can decide at the end of the day which one of these you would like to use. But that pretty much the installation is pretty much covered. This is just optional, additional information. All right, if I refresh this, you can see that that is it. So it works perfectly fine. So in most instances, what I would recommend that you do is to actually just leave this in here because it will work regardless. The config is fine regardless, so you can just leave this. I don't think it really does much difference. So it's really up to you which one of them you want to choose. So that is pretty much it for it. So there's a write-up on Fedora Education for this, so I'll leave the link in the description for you to go ahead and check that out. At the end of the day, you can choose which one of them you prefer to use or whichever approach is best for you, whether you want to go manually. That would be useful in a very simple application, like a very small application, or if you want to use the norm, adding all the components. I think probably the only situation I see that that would be useful is if you have like an extremely large application that actually uses all of the components, and even with that, the Vite plugin with tree shaking is probably going to still be much better because it's going to squeeze out at least a little bit more performance for you. So you can decide at the end of the day. I probably would just recommend using the Vite plugin or the manual imports, but maybe I'll probably never recommend importing all the components, either the manual or the Vite plugin for me. At the end of the day, you can choose for your specific instance. Again, the whole write-up for this and how to do this configuration will be in the description, and if I end up uploading this to GitHub, that will also be in the description as well. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.